Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and this is a review of the 3 matches which took place in the Scottish Premiership on Sunday. So if you are not aware, there was a podcast recorded on Sunday and released on Sunday in which Tony Anderson and Joel Sked looked through the 3 matches which took place on Saturday. That was the draws between Motherwell Hearts, Killie and Dundee United, and Dundee's victory over St Mirren. But now we move to Sunday. And joining me to discuss the 3 matches which took place, including his team putting in a stinker of a performance at home to Falkirk, it's Euan Taylor. Euan, other than that, how are you?
I'm very well, apart from that. I had a lovely weekend.
You're wearing quite a snazzy Christmas jumper.
Yeah, I've got into the Christmas spirit. Yeah, I was with the kids and that, so they've gone Christmas after the last couple of days. It's the youngest daughter's birthday tomorrow, so I'm off work. So it has been quite a good few days for me, and on a personal level, ruined only by watching the game yesterday, which was absolutely horrendous. But we'll come on to that. No doubt deservedly last, given how terrible a game it was.
Yeah, we'll come to that last as well. That's the game I've seen none of. I watched back the Aberdeen game earlier on today, and I also I planned on seeing it at the time, but Saturday night got a bit away from me, so I didn't watch it at the time. But I have watched back the vast majority of the game between Celtic and Hibs at Easter Road, which was a live game on the telly, and that's probably the place to start. There were 3 goals in this one. It was not the best day of football, because I wouldn't even say this was particularly a great encounter, but it was one that if you are, if you're watching it live or neutral or whatever, you have obviously kind of had the audience entertained right up till the last kick. Celtic emerging as 2-1 victors. And Euan, I think Tony said this in the chat as the game was coming to a close, and he called it a professional performance from Celtic. That's correct. I think we should point out, though, that any time you call something a professional performance, what you're actually meaning is a bit of a rubbish performance, but one in which you managed to get the victory. Well,
yeah, I think that there's a lot of since Neil's come back in. Look, before Neil came in, Celtic's results were bad and the performances were bad, and now there've been some good performances. Certainly on Thursday night, the Celtic were, I would say, actually good. They're probably the best they've played in months anyway. But actually the performances, I think domestically, other than the sort of, shooting fish in a barrel matches they've had at home, they haven't actually been that great. And it is quite ironic, obviously, that Martin O'Neill, just before he got the Celtic job, he gave this big interview to The Guardian where he was just decrying XG and saying it was all the absolute nonsense. And then he's kind of proved it since he came back, because Celtic have lost the last 2 games on XG and have obviously won them anyway. And certainly, it wasn't as stinking. I thought Celtic were appalling at St Mirren the week before. They were actually, for large spells of the game yesterday, they were good, particularly first half. And they could have put the game to bed just about. They would have been slightly forced to do so, but they could have put the game to bed before half time.
That was their strongest period in the game, was between the Hibs handing them the first goal and Sirachi should have, really, from that distance. Obviously unlucky it hit the post, but should have from that distance burst the back of the net, and that would have made it 3-0 at half time. Celtic were good in that period. I don't want to say, I know I called it a rubbish performance at the start. That's probably too harsh. Rubbish is a bit far. I was being a bit facetious there.
Yeah.
But it was just like, the second half performance in particular, and even the way they started the game, where they didn't immediately go for Hibs. And they did kind of step
had
back.
That chance before Celtic looked like scoring whatsoever.
And they weren't like, they won the first goal from like pressing, but often the time they were kind of happy to engage basically they always kind of engaged the first pass. So I suppose that's what they'd done in that moment where they got the goal, because it was the goalkeeper passing out. But usually if it was a Hibs defender who had possession, they were kind of fine to just kind of let them have it, and then once the ball was played into the midfield, then go for it. And they did kind of naturally as a team dropped back a bit at times, where I was a bit surprised by their approach to it. And then in the second period, like for pretty much the entire half, it was more about let's just keep possession, and they didn't really kind of overcommit or even commit a lot of bodies in general forward to try and kill the game off. And it's an interesting choice because at the end it did work, but I think they were maybe a little bit fortunate that it did work because Hibs did create 2 late chances, and usually you see Celtic in those kind of situations, even after Hibs have got a penalty, even after an opponent in general has got a goal back on them, they're still going to kill the game off as opposed to going, no, let's just keep possession. And I suppose the fact they're playing at Easter Road maybe comes into it, that you want to take the crowd out of the game, so the more you have the ball, the less engaged the crowd are, the less Hibs are kind of making things chaotic and getting up and at you and causing you problems. But it still was a bit fortunate to work out in the end, because you had the Bowie header where Schmeichel makes a really good save, and then Chris Cadden probably should have done better with his chance, which was only about a minute later.
It was, I mean, that's actually, he kicked it into the ground, Cadden. So that was
Chris Cadden with a pass showing poor technique. Come on, Euan.
I know. But yeah, that was just frustrating. And yeah, for allowing like Schmeichel to be the hero.
Well, frustrating for you. I'm now just making my peace with Hearts wanting second place. So Celtic can do whatever they want now, including beating Hibs at Easter Road.
Well, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's just.
By the way, it's bloody irrelevant. By the way, it's irrelevant to you two as well. You should be wanting Celtic to win, so Hibs don't beat you in the 4th or something.
Oh God! Well, we'll come on to that. But I do think it just in general. I mean, Martin O'Neill's done better than I thought he would when he came in. So I think hands up, fair enough. But I do think there's a little bit of like. There's a bit of reverse engineering, and you look at the results and think, oh, Celtic must be playing a lot better than they were, and I don't think that's actually true. I think they are playing better, but much better. I don't think so, and I think if you looked at that, you have Cadden who's a better footballer, or Bowie's header goes in, then I think people are saying, oh, that was actually quite poor from Celtic. You know, they had the game won, and then they sat back and they pissed away 2 points.
Yeah, so the Hibs goal would have completely changed how you viewed that second half.
Yeah.
Or second Hibs goal, I should say.
Exactly. So, and I do think, yeah, and I don't know if that's O'Neill's, this is complete speculation, but sometimes when I've watched Celtic of late, I've wondered if it's like Sean Maloney is the ideas man. Because they're doing things like first half, There's a point where Colby Donovan was almost playing like as a number 10, just briefly, but he was like very high and very inverted for a fullback. And like, I'm sorry, but like no Martin O'Neill team that I've ever seen has done anything like that. And he's not like, in recent, he's not really had a recent job. I don't think he's had like a tactical reinvention since he's been in the TalkSport studio. Like his Ireland team played like like it was dinosaur football, was proper like rubbish. So I get that, and this might be wrong, but I think Sean Maloney prepares the tactics for the team and all that. As we know, like Martin O'Neill's never really done that, at any point in his career, and he's very much been a figurehead. But then when the game's going on, his instincts kick in, and I do think there's an element of it's worked, basically. But like Celtic have generally probably started games better than they've finished them. Certainly, the League Cup semi-final was like that, where Celtic had a tactical plan that was really working first half, and then just sat back on the and let Rangers somehow, this Rangers team somehow outplay them for a half with a man less. And and then the game like that was certainly that the weekend where the Celtic I thought were doing some interesting things tactically first half, and then second half far less of that. So that might not be that might not be the case, and maybe Sean Maloney's in-game management has never been a strong point. So Sean Maloney might be everyone's during the game as well. I don't know, but
that's what I think. And if you are wanting to be, if you want to be a bit more gracious, generous, maybe the word to use towards Celtic about Sunday's performance. Anyway, carry on. No, but if somebody listening, if there's a Celtic fan listening who wants to be, or a Hibs fan who wants to be like, oh no, we're beaten by a better team than what you're giving credit for. If you want to be a bit more generous, then yeah, you can say that actually, it probably gets the best out of both at this point in their career. Because you've got, and I certainly agree that O'Neill and Maloney have been good. And I actually did say that. I'll give myself a rare pat on the back. I said that I thought it would actually be, if it's just for a period of time while they look for a new manager, because I was like everybody when they first announced it, thinking, right, Christ, it's just going to be the management team for the rest of the season. Because I do think it is still, even though they have been better, and I don't think Celtic fans would be overly raging if, like, say, the Wilfred Nancy thing fell through and they're like, okay, we're keeping O'Neill and Maloney for a couple of months. I think Celtic fans in general would be like, okay, that's fine. I think it is a wee bit kind of built on a house of sand, that kind of what you're saying. I think they're due another couple of poor performances. Due another couple of poor results to go with the performances being a bit subpar, like this game, like the game against St Mirren.
It's interesting you say that, but would it not be the case that if you took like a poll, I don't know if there is a poll in like Kerridale Street or whatever, there's probably not, but would there not be a majority of Celtic fans that would probably prefer O'Neill and Maloney to stay in charge for the rest of the season at least? Than
quite possibly,
Nancy.
quite possibly. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. However, if I'm wrong, if I'm wrong on the counts of like I wasn't all that impressed with the performance on Sunday, and if I'm also wrong about them their abilities to lead Celtic for the rest of the season and get the most out of what this Celtic squad currently is, then what you would say is that Maloney always kind of been a tactics ideas man, never really impresses a manager. We had him on a View for the Terrace one time, lovely guy. I know you don't have to be like the patriarchal figure that a manager used to be, but I was still a bit surprised having met him. I still kind of thought there still needs to be a certain kind of gravitas, I think, a lot of the time, and I wasn't necessarily sure whether he was somebody that kind of had that to command an entire dressing room of players. But he obviously knows a lot about it. Like, he'll forget more in a week about football than I'll learn in a lifetime. So he obviously knows a lot about the game. He's definitely somebody who studies the game, kind of deep thinker in terms of it. But then you've got Martin O'Neill. I mean, you've seen it in some of his press conferences and stuff. Like, he's still got a bit of the old charisma, a bit of the old Riz. Like,
he does.
And I'm not just talking about his dress sense since he came back as well.
That is the thing that I think when people try to remember this spell, like the Martin O'Neill return, the one thing that everyone will remember are the tracksuits. I don't think the football won't really, because it hasn't really. I mean, Callum McGregor's like last minute winner at St Mirren, people might remember that, but and like maybe the Feyenoord game, but like generally speaking, I think people will remember the tracksuit. That'll be the one thing that people remember. Martin O'Neill wearing that Adidas tracksuit. So fair play to him for that.
Yeah, and like moments like this, because I mean, to be fair, Celtic got out there and they got the job done, and they did take the Hibs and the crowd out of it for long periods in that second half. So who knows? Maybe I'm talking pish. And what you would say is that Maloney is the man to basically train the players in terms of what they're doing and where they should be and where they should be standing, and when you're standing here, you should be over here, and et cetera, et cetera. But O'Neill's the man who, in these moments, in these games, is like, right, we're 2 ahead at half time. Do we go for the jugular? No, because it's maybe about just kind of not even trusting this team that much as well.
Yeah.
Because if he had Sutton and Larsson up top, I don't think he just would have been sitting back on that lead. I think they would have still been going for a bit more. But he probably knows the limitations of this squad as well, and maybe it was a case of he felt like with all his savvy and all his years of experience, he's looking at the kind of the game state and going, right, actually, let's just kill it and see this second half out and give them as few opportunities as possible.
Yes, yeah, and not to make just on Nancy briefly. I mean, this is making a vast generalisation on the very, very little evidence, but I actually watched an MLS game on Saturday for sort of gambling deviancy purposes, and it was into Miami against who they playing, New York City, and I don't know if this is. I mean, let's just make a sweeping generalisation based on two teams that aren't even the team that Nancy's in charge of, but that league is not what it used to be in terms of physicality. Like it's certainly my stereotype of the MLS a few years ago, sort of say like the Mo Edu era, was like your archetypal MLS player was like Mo Edu, like technically not that great, but physically impressive, and the full athletes basically. That is not the case anymore. It's like your archetypal MLS player now seems to be like sort of not just taking Messi out of it, every team seems to have a cadre of like 35-year-old Argentinians. And it's that kind of pace of game. And honestly, it's like a retirement league. Like based on that one game, and obviously has loads of players that you like, Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets and guys like that, right? But like
and
the other
Ryan
team,
Gold.
and Ryan Gold. Well, you can see why Ryan Gold's done well, because that is that kind of football, and I do think that it is having got like, you've probably got like the greatest cultural fit you could have as a Celtic manager is in Martin O'Neill, but particularly with John Maloney. They're both like deeply versed in Celtic and understand the club, understand Scottish football. Maybe less, maybe Martin O'Neill's still in his head thinking Scottish football the same as it was 20 odd years ago, whatever. But generally speaking, he's he does understand it, and probably if he stayed here a bit longer, he would sit back less in games because he'd realise he doesn't have to. But to swap that for, like, fair enough if they were appointing, I don't know, sort of, even someone like Keenan McKenna, who was mentioned before, or someone, like say Eddie Howe was available, again, right? Someone like that, someone with like a really good reputation in England, understands British football, has a good big reputation. You can see, like Martin O'Neill, that it's just this honeymoon period, move on. There's going to be, you can already see it because everybody's saying it, particularly in the media, that the narrative will be instant. That if Nancy struggles at all, there will be it'll be like instantly.
Yeah. Why did they not just give it to O'Neill?
Exactly.
And speaking from a Hearts fan who watched his team again fail to win at the weekend and play rubbish again, I think the only hope of there being any sort of title challenge from anybody outside of Celtic this basically after the Christmas period is if Nancy comes in and he gets the fright of his life with Scottish football and what he wants to implement and trying to implement that into Scottish football in the middle of a season.
Yes.
I think that's really the only chance. Because O'Neill and Maloney, there's Tony fair play, Tony was right. Like O'Neill and Maloney like I say, I said earlier that I think that if they're in charge, I don't think it'll necessarily be as rosy as it is like this for the rest of the season. I do think there is a slight kind of house of sand thing to it. However, they will still lead Celtic to the title if they stayed for the rest of the campaign. And
then so will Noddy probably. It's just, I think...
I'm not saying he's not. He might be a great success. I'm just saying that's the only chance of like... The only chance of really there being a title race is if he comes in and he's a disaster.
Yes.
Because he doesn't get Scottish football.
Yeah.
That's really it.
The other thing that will probably help him, to be honest, is that he's coming in mid-season and he's not being asked to... Where you won't have the opportunity, really. I'm sure they'll make things in January, but he's not going to have the opportunity to rip it up and start again. So the players understand Scottish football. So even if they're getting told to do something weird, they might well try to implement that, but they have such a deep well of experience in this league to fall back on that there's only so... unless they do start selling players in January, almost try to do what they should have done in the summer now, unless they do something like that, which I don't think they will. I think they're just tinkering around the edges, then again, that'll probably help them at least until the summer.
Should talk about Hibs before we move on. Yeah. Tough week, very tough week for Hibs because you're looking at the league table now, and certainly it was considered coming into it because we filmed the last episode of A View for the Terrace for 2025 last week, and on the Monday, I can't remember who wrote it in or not, but on the Monday we when we had our meeting to talk about what we were going to talk about, there was the shout of, like, let's big up Hibs as title contenders if they beat Motherwell on Tuesday, because if they do, like, you look at the underlying statistics, Hibs have actually, like, according to XG, Hibs are the best team in the league so far this season. But in typical Hibs style, they've kind of rediscovered that softness that I felt like they managed to shrug off towards, pretty much last season after December, where there wasn't any kind of quote-unquote Hibs in. It was just they were getting the job done, they were getting victories where they should, they were incredibly consistent. And in this season, they've just not got the points that their performances have merited. A little like this in this game, not at all with the Motherwell game in midweek where they were beaten at Fir Park, but had they even got 4 points out of this, like, regardless of which way around that was, whether it was a draw against Celtic and a victory against Motherwell, or the other way around, you would still be saying, like, if we're talking about Hearts for the title, we should be talking about Hibs for the title. However, just when it gets to this moment, and I didn't like, they used the term Hibs on Sky Sports, I was like, can we not just throw this around willy-nilly to, like, any time they do something bad in a game? It doesn't necessarily mean they're Hibs in it just because the goalie passes it pretty much right to a Celtic player. No. But probably what was Hibs in it was then collapsing from that point forward, losing an goal immediately and being very lucky not to be 3-0 down at half time. So that softness that Hibs, kind of classically Hibs had, that they seem to manage to sort this season, it's definitely back this campaign, because you don't even have to look at this one. You can look at some of the other games as well. The Falkirk game away from home is probably the best example. Killie at home as well. Games that they've got in the palm of their hand and they're just not managing to see it out. And it was just kind of typical this game. Missed chances at one end, gave away a goal at the other, and didn't ride it out in the crucial part of the game where they needed to.
Yeah. There were, there's some bits of this team I just don't rate. Like the midfield, I still don't really like. I think the goalkeeper still in it is an improvement. That I think that's a bit of an aberration, and you wouldn't be calling to put Jordan Smith back in the team. But it's that was a horrific error. Hanley's been good, but I thought Bashiri was all right. But I wonder about that signing. I still wonder about that signing.
I think it's still been a good signing because he has been good. But it's exactly what I said at the time. I was like, what do you need Hanley for if you've got Bashir?
Yeah, exactly. So you've taken a guy who...
I think Hibs are better when O'Hara's on the right side of the back three as opposed to both of them in the side.
Yeah, I don't think you can play both of them. And you had a guy who's at the top of his, getting to the top of his game, looking like he was going to still got a bit of development in him. You might make some money off him, make him, almost like turn into like Mr. Hibs. And then you sign a guy who is probably at his best slightly better than him. Who's also really, but is old, so you're only going to get, however long you get out of Grant Hanley. So yeah, I just thought that was an odd allocation of resource, if nothing else. So it's not to say that Hanley's been better actually, probably than I thought he was going to be, but for Hibs. But I still, even if he has a good individual season, I'm not entirely sure that's been a good signing, strategically for Hibs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Right, let's move on to our second game, and we'll go for the only one of the remaining two games which had a goal in it, and that was scored by Nicky Devlin towards the end of Aberdeen's 1-0 victory away to Livingston. That is the third win in 4 for Aberdeen. Performances haven't really improved, I would say, and this would be another game to basically further strengthen that point. But the three-at-the-back system has improved them quite a bit defensively, at least domestically. Ever since the Motherwell away defeat, where you thought that might be the end of Tallinn, and that was the first game in which he brought out the back three that had only been seen once, and that was the Scottish Cup final last year. Ever since then, they've played 7 Premiership matches and only conceded 3 goals. Jack Milne, in particular, in excellent form at the middle of the back. Another good game he had on Sunday. Possession, I think I've seen him do better, but in terms of defending the penalty area, he done really good. Aberdeen done that very well in general, protecting their box, because Livingston had a number of kind of opportunities around the penalty area to make something happen, but were quite light for a lot of the territory they did have at home in this game, quite light on clear-cut chances inside the Aberdeen box. Mitov, don't really remember him having too much to do anything out of the ordinary. I don't think so. And yeah, that was basically what it is to say about Aberdeen there. I still don't, like, in this game. Well, actually, I'll tell you a bit more because I've watched this. I'll tell you a bit more of this game in a second, but I'll go to you first of all, so I'm not just speaking for about 5 minutes straight.
Yeah, that's only some highlights of this game. I did enjoy Nicky Devlin not doing a non-celebration celebration. He went for it, despite the scoring against his former clubs. Fair play. But yeah, I just sort of thought, just on Livingston, I think this game sort of summed up why they're going to get relegated, I think.
Yeah, well, I was going to come on and say something less. I'm intrigued to hear what you've got to say.
I just don't think they have anything about them. And I think they've gone they just, I know that they're not, they're not old school Livingston. Right, and that's fine, right? Because that old school Livingston team, had like, Halka and Gallagher and guys like that who've went on to have really good careers. But I don't think Livingston are hard to play against in a way that they used to be, the traditional way, like old school Livingston were, and they're not good enough at football at this level to compensate for that. And they're not, ultimately, I don't think David Martindale's a good enough manager at coaching that kind of football. Unlike the team we'll come on to speak about that played Ibrox, not the home team. Right, so they don't have, like, you obviously had to and quite correctly had to reinvent themselves slightly to get promoted, which they did, but not convincingly, really. And then they've not made themselves horrible again, which I think they should have done. They've tried to make themselves like a decent football team, but they don't really have much about them.
Yeah.
And that's, I thought, like I said at the time last week, I thought any other team in the league would have taken points off Rangers last week, and they didn't. And then Livingston didn't. And that's kind of proven by the other game yesterday. So I just don't see it with Livingston, and I think other teams just have slightly more X factor than they do, even the worst teams in the league do. So yeah, the
thing is, since they fixed the defence, and they have fixed the defence, like Ryan McGowan going out earlier this season was a huge blow for them, and that did cost them some points. So if he hadn't gone out and the defence hadn't fallen to pieces, then who knows, they might actually not be sitting bottom at this point in time. And they are competitive in just about every single game as well. That's not a bad Livy team. Like, compared to the one that got relegated last time out, that was a bad team. That was just clearly, like, just not up to scratch. This is a decent side, but you're right in that there's just probably a lack of top flight attacking talent in it. Because, like I said earlier, they had a lot of the ball, they had a lot of territory in this game, first half in particular, but they just couldn't do anything really with it. And as I kind of said earlier, like, I'm trying to think back, I can't think of too much that Mitov had to do, if anything at all. And they had the opportunities, like in and around the penalty area. I thought when I saw the team, I thought Yengi up front by himself, I thought, that's going to be a disaster, but he actually had a decent game in terms of holding the ball up and getting his team up the park and linking with the attacking players. Lewis Smith was excellent at the start of the season. He started off this game a bit bright, but kind of faded a bit. Pittman had his opportunities in and around the box. Stevie May had his opportunities in and around the box. But, I mean, just saying that sentence kind of tells you its own story without being too harsh on either players. Because I think even last season we would have looked at the pair of them and said, like, are these two good enough to be starting players in a Scottish Premiership team that's going to survive? And you would probably say no. I think both have done better this season than we've expected, but that's still an issue in general. I think Daniel Finlayson, since he's moved to centre-back after, like, they had that problem with McGowan going out and then couldn't find an answer, they moved him over from right-back. Finlayson, he's been really strong in there. He had another good game at the weekend. McGowan's back on the bench now after his illness. It means that they can take a bit of time to get him fully back up to what he was before, because due to his illness, he lost a lot of weight. He was in hospital for a while, so he's probably going to need as much time as possible to get himself to gain that weight again and to get himself fully match fit. So that's fine. I like Sazuo, is that how you pronounce it, in the middle of the park?
Yeah.
He's got real energy, real quickness. Macaulay Tate kind of has his moments, but there's a lot to kind of like about them, but they're just, they kind of lack that real kind of, they just lack that kind of real quality, that X factor. They need a Dykes, or they need like a Newbley of his first few months. They're lacking that kind of player that's going to really kind of create stuff for them in attack. And you can see, even at the end of this game, they're making the changes to try and go and win it. They're bringing on Bakila, they're bringing on Graham Carey, and then Carey's at fault for the goal because Graham Carey, never been a great defender, tries to usher it out. Shinnie gets it off him. And also as well, because I watched it back, so I was like, how is there so much space at the end of that? Like at the back post for Aberdeen, but there's two players lining up. There's Devlin, and I think there was maybe Leighton Clarkson just hanging behind them as well, who could have got it if Devlin didn't. And it was when it looks like Carey's going to win the ball back, Yengi leaks out for the penalty area and then doesn't bother coming back. But I think that was kind of their mindset. They were like, no, we want to go and win this game. This is a game we could and maybe should win based on what's happened over the course of the previous 80 minutes. And ultimately that cost them. And they're basically, to go with your point, you're needing, this team would stay up in any season that had like a Dundee United from the Mark Birighitti campaign. Sorry to pick on Dundee United again, but like Dundee United from the season where they went down in 2016, or like Hearts that year, where it's just like this team that's like just an absolute shambles. Now we keep thinking Dundee's going to be that, but Dundee have this ability to pull a result out of their arse that Livingston have not showed themselves capable of doing so far this season. And I think they've got to be looking at them or Kelly and hoping that one of them just ends up in the absolute mud, that these results stop happening for Dundee, that Presley eventually talks himself out of a job with all the weird things he says, which vex the support, and that Kelly are just in a complete spiral under kettlebell, and without their goalkeeping situation, that just, by the time Streak's back, or by the time we get to January, and they can fix it, although the keeper made a great save at the weekend, so who knows, maybe it's fixed already, but I think that's the hope for Livy, that these teams just kind of, somebody falls to bits, and they stay as they are, not the best, but competitive, and then win a playoff final against Partick Thistle or St Johnstone.
Yes, I would say that is the best they could hope for.
As for Aberdeen, so this is quite a critical show so far, but I don't know, there just wasn't like a lot of great performances from these two games, and it's when we get to the third game, there's one team we'll praise, but there's certainly going to be more criticism dished out for another side there. But as for going back to Aberdeen, so I should be giving, I'm going to give Thielen some credit here, because it's deserved, because they're winning matches now, and that was the most important thing, because I criticised him before, and as a lot of people did, and deservedly so, for his failure to adapt. He wanted his team to play a certain way last season. They spent a lot of money on attacking talent. They replenished the team in January. That was supposed to turn things around. They've done it again in the summer, and he couldn't get it going again. From whatever he managed to capture in those 4 months, he's failed to get it back. So he's pivoted into a different style of, well, at least in a different shape he's pivoted, and they are a bit more kind of defensively sound now, and they're managing to ground out results. Now, maybe that's all he needs. Maybe they just need this reset. Get a few victories on the board, get themselves up the table, get confidence going, and then maybe you can start getting them playing with the intensity and tempo needed to make his style of play properly work. And I can certainly understand why Aberdeen fans are looking at the positives and still remaining behind Thielen, because as Tom Watt said on the Patreon that him and Craig Cairns did a couple of weeks back, I think Aberdeen fans are kind of sick of the cycle of going through managers, and obviously and understandably they want Thielen to succeed, because he is the man who brought the Scottish Cup back to Pittodrie. And he's rolled the dice, he's doing things differently, but I still look at their performances and I still look at the talent they have on the park, and I can't help but think they should still be performing better than they are. But at this point in time, it is just about getting results on the board, and let's see what happens over the Christmas period, and let's see what happens as well after they're out of Europe and they can stop having that kind of distraction that seems to fuck up every Scottish club except from Rangers, but not this season.
Yeah, when I was watching that, even just the highlights of that game, I was like, I think there's quite a few Aberdeen players that would get in the Rangers team, and have had better careers, and would have, if they'd been signed in the summer, would be considered a better signing than some of the players that Rangers did sign. So, which maybe takes us neatly on to to that nonsense that occurred yesterday at Ibrox.
I'm the one leading this. I'm the one that says we move on, right? Okay, but there's one more, right? Okay, so I've not really talked about big picture. There's not a whole lot to say about this game. Aberdeen were strong defensively. Livingston couldn't do enough with their opportunities in and around the penalty area. Aberdeen really struggled to build up play for a couple of reasons. One, Lazatic did not have a good game up front. He just wasn't really involved enough, and he's got to be there to kind of hold up play and drag them up the park in games away from home like this. And Auchiche and Carlson, very Jekyll and Hyde performances in this one match alone. Like, they were, Aberdeen's passing, first half in particular, was quite bad. Like, there was a lot of giving the ball away when they really shouldn't do, like a lot of sloppy passes, and those two were among the chief culprits for that. However, And now Sheesh was playing a bit more withdrawn in this game. He was playing as like a number 8 alongside Nielsen. And there was aspects of that to like, because he's not really done anything further forward, but you can see in him where the kind of talent is, and he's got a bit of the technique, he's got a bit of the quickness, he's got a bit of the agility, and I think maybe having him a bit deep where he can use that kind of quickness a bit more, can progress play quickly. I think that's maybe where, if he's going to make a success out of this Aberdeen spell, this loan spell, which I think they've got an option to buy at the end of it.
They do, yeah. But I think it's pretty pricey though.
Yeah, but maybe it is a bit further back. Maybe it is that number 8 role where he can take the ball and kind of run with it and move it faster. And it was a bold call by Tillene, because even though he wasn't necessarily playing brilliantly, and it was the same with Carlson, I still thought that through them two, and to a much lesser extent Armstrong, because Armstrong was quite quiet, but I thought, like, had I been watching it live, I would have thought, like, the only way they're getting a goal is through these guys. And he took them off. And I thought, well, that's a bit bold. Like, obviously it worked out for them, but let's see how it works out for them. And it did, because it was Milanovic with the shot, which won the initial corner, and then I think he took the corner, and then it was cleared for another corner, and then they took it, and then that was where the goal came from. And it was Keskinen who also came on, who put in the cross. So he's rolled the dice, used a bit of that depth, and it's worked out for them. And who knows, maybe that is the way for this. I'm looking at this Aberdeen team, I think it's got far too much attacking talent, that it should be playing better than it is. And I do keep the opinion that not necessarily better, because I think that's maybe unfair, a better fit as manager, we maybe have them playing better football. But who knows? Maybe this is all this Aberdeen team needs, because they've got a lot of talent in attack. If you don't concede any goals, there's enough there that you'll score one up the other end. And maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe it is the way to shitfest your way through a lot of games and then to get up the table that way. Because at the end of the day, 3 points is 3 points. Right, now we can move on to Rangers.
I'm just so excited to speak about this game.
Stay in your motherfucking lane. Right. Rangers 0, Falkirk 0. We'll have some praise for the Bairns soon enough. But Euan, firstly, Rangers. We kind of saw this coming though, didn't we? Because Rangers been getting results, but
we were saying this week, we were chatting obviously about on one of our excellent Patreon episodes that everyone should subscribe to. But we were talking about Danny Rowe and saying, this is in the post, a result that matches the performances in the post, and here it was. Yeah, absolutely dreadful, absolutely horrendous. I think I said in that Patreon episode that I thought that the Livingston game was the worst Rangers had played all season. This was worse, so that's great. We're trending negatively. The weird thing was that from after the game, Danny Rowe was like, "Oh yeah, the problem is this team is too much like a roller coaster," and it's like well, the roller coaster's not go up and down, because I've not seen any of the ups.
It's a kid's roller coaster.
It's like it's like it's a small world in your Disney or whatever. It's just like flat and shit. It's like we don't every performance is the same, and the thing is, like, anything can happen in a Rangers game because nothing happens. So Rangers don't make any chances, so it only takes a very slight mistake and the Rangers are in serious bother, and that could have very easily could have happened in the game on Sunday. I think if there's one criticism you could make of John McGlynn on Sunday, other than his big coat, which is a bit odd, would be that he probably introduced Aguiman too late in the game, because if he'd had a wee bit longer...
So his mistake in going to Ibrox was in showing Rangers too much respect, is what you're saying, basically.
I would say so, because that game was there to be won by Falkirk, I would say. And, you gave Aguiman the last half hour. I think, and I know when look, he's the type of player he is. He doesn't suit playing every game. He's not a world beater by any stretch, right? But he's got certain attributes which this Ranger team in particular we're always going to struggle with. And I think if he'd been involved earlier, maybe even started this game, then this was the kind of game for him. And and Falkirk might well have, because I thought after in the last half hour they looked slightly the more likely to score. So yeah, I think on Rangers, odd. Look, now this is I think I said a while back, maybe when Martin was sacked or when Rose was appointed, that I think this Rangers team is for players, I thought at that time it's probably the worst since the first season maybe back in the Premiership season. I actually think it's worse than that.
Warburton.
Yes, I think it's a good
that
bit
team
worse.
had Harry Forrester. What side that was?
Well, this team's got Oliver Atman. I mean, it's it's shit. Everyone's shit in the team, and it's not. I actually think performances are not any better than they were under Russell Martin. I think they're more pragmatic, but there's question marks whether you should be that pragmatic with this team because it doesn't have the quality to nick a game, really. So it could probably this team needs to be more than the sum of its parts because the parts are crap. And if you play pragmatic football and just try to nick things, then you're going to get absolutely nowhere. I mean, Rangers' best two players on Sunday, I thought, were the two centre halves who are ropey at best, but played okay. Rangers' best player, full stop, and generally, this season and in this team is James Tavernier. Still, and he's only. I mean, I really dislike this whole squad, obviously, but you'll never make me hate James Tavernier. But I should not still be watching him play right back for Rangers. And yeah, he's not only the best right back at Rangers, he's the best footballer at Rangers. Right, he's the only one that does anything creatively, and a lot of that is just set pieces. But he's the only one that can do anything creatively. They keep on, and it's. I was saying this to some of my pals. It's nobody plays their way into this team. People just play their way out of it. So a guy who was crap 2 games ago starts a game because someone else got a goal and was equally crap. So it's back to Tell Osgard because he didn't start midweek, but then we played Shimity and Dino, whoever we played on Thursday, and they were crap. So is that right? Back to you just has a constant rotation because nobody makes the position their own. So yeah, absolutely dreadful. I don't hold out much hope for January, but I mean, I almost anything, because as I've said before, normally you would have signed one good player by accident, and amongst all the players the Rangers signed, so hopefully we might get a couple of accidental players that are better than what we've got in January. I'm not convinced the structure's there to make that happen, but yeah, absolutely brutal. And yeah, you presume the performances will improve at some point, but I'm not sure where. And if it sounds hyperbolic, but if performances were like this for the rest of the season, Rangers would struggle to finish top 6. That is how bad it is, and all the underlying numbers point you to that. So it's not just Rangers aren't in the title race now, or Rangers might struggle to finish second. It could be far worse than that if performances don't improve. And the only way I see performances improving really is for quite significant change to happen in the playing staff in January, which is always difficult. So yeah, hold on to your hats, because pretty much anything could happen from here, I would say.
Wow. That's making me feel a lot better about things after, as I mentioned earlier, my team's recent slide.
Yes.
Second would still be class.
Well, yes. Not as good as first.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you that from experience. So...
Well, when you've only finished second, Hearts have only finished second in the top flight once in my entire lifetime. Well, no, actually, sorry, that's not right. That's not true. They've only finished second once since I've started going to games. Finished second twice in the 3 or 4 years before I started going. But yeah, it's been a lean time to support a team where you're wanting them to challenge at the top of the table. So second would be class. Second's Champions League. I've been saying it all season that I thought the second Champions League spot was gone. It's actually not gone for next season. We still have it. It's just that it'll be, I think they enter into the second qualifying round. So you just have to win one of your 3 games. If you finish second, you just have to win one of your possibly 3 qualified ties, because if you lose Champions League, then you go into the third round of Europa League, and then you're into playoff of Conference League. You win one of them, and then you're guaranteed group stage football. Which, I mean, I know what would happen if Hearts and Derek McInnes do it. They wouldn't. They would lose all three and not do it. But it would still be class to finish second.
Games.
Even to get a Champions League qualifier would still be brilliant. It's only been experienced once. So yeah, you made me feel good. But while we're on positivity, finally in this podcast, Falkirk. What did you make of them? And what have you, in fact, we've not really had you on the main show a lot recently, so what have you made of Falkirk in general?
Yeah, I think when your article where you basically apologised to Falkirk for saying they were going to get relegated.
Yep.
Basically, yeah, I think that might as well have been on behalf of the whole podcast. So I was very much of that view. They played really well yesterday. Really well. And it's probably most impressive that they kept a clean sheet, given the defence is still pretty makeshift. So
it's makeshift, but the guys that
have come in and maybe better than the players. Yeah, maybe. And
like Connor Allen was supposedly, I think he was supposed to be seen as like a defensive midfielder, and he's been centre half, and he's been good whenever I've seen him. Philip Lisa, I think, was signed as a centre half. He's never really played left back before. He's been excellent in some games at left back. So
yeah, Connor Allen really surprised me, because I actually saw a fair bit of Connor Allen when he was a Rangers youth, played in like that youth Champions League thing that they have, and watched him quite a few times, and I thought he was absolutely terrible. So in youth football, I'll be up against like decent youth players. So I'm very surprised that he's made it, or not that he's made it, but he's given such a good account of himself, and he was really good. So yeah, they kept the ball really well, Falkirk. Your Rangers, I would say, if you give any like credit to the things that have changed since Danny Rule's come in, I think Rangers' press has been better than it was before. But that didn't bear any fruit whatsoever with the way that Falkirk were just really confident playing it out, and Scott Bain played some really nice passes out. So yeah, I was just generally that's the kind of result. Like if you told me at the start of the season the Rangers would draw at Falkirk, one, I would have been surprised, but that's a pre-season optimism I had there. The Rangers might have been a competent football team, but secondly, it wouldn't have been 0-0. Like I would have thought, well, Falkirk probably quite a good attacking team, so maybe they just have a couple of really good bits of play, and it's 2-2 or something like that, right? I wouldn't have expected Falkirk to be able to come to Rangers and keep a clean sheet, and they did comfortably, really. There were very little chances, a few chances the Rangers made. So yeah, impressive. And I actually thought like McGlynn's comments about not, actually being a bit disappointed at Falkirk because they didn't like make more of their own opportunities, or not that they didn't make more of their opportunities, because they didn't really create a great deal. It was more that they in the final third they weren't that great. I agree with that, because I think actually had they been a wee bit sharper at the top end of the pitch, as they have been recently in other games, they're the one.
Well, the main thing for Falkirk to worry about is that Ross McKeever's out long term, and I thought he's been really good whenever I've seen him play, and he's quite an important part to that team. I don't think it's quite a house of cards scenario though. I think they'll generally be fine. I don't see them, but I think that's probably what's going to stop this from being a proper kind of fairy tale stuff, and them, top six or getting in the hunt for Europe kind of thing. I'm not going to say they're going to fall down the table, but I do think that if he's out long term and they can't bring in somebody like him in January, because Brian Graham, he's got all the experience, he's got the kind of goal scoring savvy, but at the Premiership level, he's not really a kind of back to goal player. Yeah, he's not mobile enough. His touch isn't as good as McKeever's as well. Yeah, and it's just not quite the same. And they're kind of lacking something else kind of behind that as well, because I've blanked to his name, the double-barreled player they got, one of the many young boys they got for down south, but Samuel Olusuye, I think that's his name.
Oh yeah,
he's not up to it, and Gary Oliver would probably even be a better shout to kind of lead the line and just work really hard. But Gary Oliver at a Premiership level is going to score like 2 goals if he plays 38 games. With all due respect, that's just kind of, he's there to do the right things and to work hard, but they are kind of now missing that, and it's a shame. But January's coming up, so if they can manage to bring in, a sticky plaster that can do the job, could do like 80% of what McKeever does, then maybe they can keep it going. But that's the maybe one kind of bit of hard luck.
Yeah.
They've had a bit of hard luck in defence and managed to make it work, but that is something that I'll be intrigued to see how that holds up over recent games and whether they can keep this form going and remain in the top 6. Anything else to say about the Bairns before we finish?
No, that was it pretty much. There's apparently Rangers state, according to someone on Heart and Hand, or esteemed fellow podcasters, someone of that said that the Rangers stadium announcer turned down the volume when they announced that Scott Arfield was coming on in order to not for it to be embarrassing, so that everyone would just give a bigger cheer to Scott Arfield than they had for anything else that happened that day. And I did think the reception was fairly muted for Scott Arfield, so I was a bit surprised by that. And I was like, that apparently that was why, because people didn't realise it was him coming on. So that's how bad it is that we have to turn down the volume when we're announcing that beloved former players are coming back, because everyone likes them more than the current team.
Tremendous. What a way to finish. Euan, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Craig.
And thank you to everybody for listening. If you can't wait until we're back next, then make sure to sign up for our Patreon. We've already plugged a couple of episodes already. There is lots of great stuff on there, and I know that's maybe banging my own drum, but I do very much enjoy listening to the other podcasts on it that I'm not involved. Like I mentioned earlier, Tom and Craig talking about Aberdeen, but I also really enjoyed the podcasts on Kieran Bowie and David Watson as we started to do kind of in focus on certain individuals in Scottish football, both players and managers, and we'll be continuing to do that as the season goes along. So if you want to sign up, it's patreon.com/Terrace Podcast, the lowest tier, which will get you 2 podcasts a week. On average, is only £2 a month. What a bargain that is in this climate. But that'll do us for now. Thank you once again. We'll talk to you again soon. Goodbye.